like get some other things that like a lot of you guys that came on that may not even know about features that exist in WoW to begin with. So we'll have some stuff there as well. We'll try to fill it up where we take up an hour, and then we'll leave like questions and whatnot. We'll leave it kind of towards the end so we can like skirt through a lot of the stuff, and then any questions we'll leave like the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes for that or whatever. And then I'll try to send out with a little more advance notice as we get a bigger list of stuff that we're going to demo, so we have like a week ahead of time so you know what's kind of coming up. So we'll start with Travis.
All right, I was asked at Paul's request to create a new field class called Conditionally Required Field. Basically what this field class does is you attach it to a field which you have requirements in the actual row for. So for example, I created this quick table. It's a used car table, just shows us what used cars we have available, and if I do an insert here, I can kind of show you what it does. We can just make up a make and model here. Let's go with a Chevy Volt, their front wheel drive, automatic. Let's say it was green, it doesn't matter. But the Chevy Volt is an electric car. So our issue here is we have two different types of engine. If we have a gasoline engine, we don't really need to show the miles per gallon, or I mean the electric range it gets. And if we have a electric engine, we don't really need to show the miles per gallon to the person who's entering the data. Okay.
You guys there?
Yep, can you hear me? Where'd you lose me?
If you sign on, then we'll be able to see your screen. Chuck's hanging us up. He's hanging our phone calls up over here.
Okay, where'd you lose me?
We lost you at, you were talking about engine type electric.
Oh, okay. So if we have an engine type electric, we are going to want to show the range on charge of the electric vehicle instead of the gasoline miles per gallon. So we've created this conditionally required field to handle that. So if I click on the electric engine type, you'll see the rate on charge field displays for us and is a required field to be entered. If I change that to gasoline, then it will switch to miles per gallon, and that field is now required. This obviously will only work on details displays. Usually things like this don't work in row collections or take a lot of work to make them work properly. So we've set it up to only work on details displays as of now. It is set up in the field descriptor that you want to be the conditionally required field descriptor. And I can go to one here and show you how it's set up. Basically the field class name, planetj.database.field.conditionally required field. And then afterwards we use a comma, and then the actual field that we're looking for the value in. So in this case it's the engine field. And then the second value is the value that we want to return to make this be a conditionally required field. So because this is the miles per gallon field, we have it set to show up in the engine field with the value of gas. And the other field, if I would go to the electric field, we'll have two different values there after the comma. It will be ELEC for ELE.
Hey Travis, can you go back to where you changed it to electric again? So we were having issues here in the conference room.
Oh,
More of us developers, we can't figure out these things.
So you guys just want to see it happening here?
Yes.
Okay. So here it's set to electric, and we see the range on charge field displayed here. Now if I switch it to gasoline, this is an entirely different field that now appears, and it is marked as required instead of the range on charge.
There we go.
So based on some settings somewhere, it can be controlled without having to have coding.
Correct. The coding is all done in the field class itself. it takes in, here, I'll show it again because I don't know if you guys had the screen up or not. It takes in two values inside the field class here. It takes in the field that you're looking for to find the value that you're looking for, which in this case was the engine field. That's the field that we're toggling to change this field. And then the value you're looking for inside that field to confirm basically that it's conditionally required. So
Okay.
when it says when the engine field says gas, this field will display and it will be marked as required.
Okay, so after the method name, it's a dot dot, and after it says dot engine gas?
It's a comma. It's a comma.
Oh, it's a
Conditionally
comma.
required field, comma, engine, comma, gas.
Okay, and those commas signify input into the method.
Correct.
I've seen that before.
Date fields.
Yep. It's kind of the same format as our specified field classes for dates.
Handy, though. You can do it right there in the builder, and you don't have to do any coding.
Yep, right.
So you have another one set up for electric, right?
Yes, correct. If I change this now to electric and I click on the range on charge field, the field descriptor changes to the electric range field, and then it's just set up using the same field engine but looking for a different value.
So it controls both the visibility and required, right?
Correct.
So what's the first parameter? Engine is always required?
Engine is what field you're looking for. So in this scenario, it's the engine type field. It's the field that it's checking to determine whether this field should be displayed and whether it should be considered required.
And the gas is that second piece?
Yes, the gas or ELE here, that is the actual value inside of this field. So this is a field descriptor,
Okay. So
I mean a possible value right now. It's actually gas in the database.
You have two separate field descriptors there. One is for gas and one is for...
No, one's for MPG and the other one's for the other field.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's set on the two different field descriptors. So this miles per gallon field has it set as gas, and then the electric charge, range on charge, has it set as electric.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Is that Kevin Campbell talking?
Yes, it is.
You sound kind of funny.
Well,
Is it very tinny?
We're through my computer speakers right now because Chuck hung us up on the regular line.
So Kevin Campbell, remember doing the IoT project when we'd have all these fields and only some of them were applicable depending on what device type it was?
Yes, I had to do that coding by hand or in a particular class, subclass.
Exactly. We've been doing that manual programming for the last 15 years. So now when we hit scenarios like that where you have a conditionally applicable field, you can do it without no coding.
Absolutely. I thought about that too. I just wasn't going to mention it to everybody.
Yes, we just got a lot faster.
Is this only for string fields?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean, it's kind of not applicable, right? Like it's a not applicable field conditionally, whether or not we show it.
That's what I was going to ask next, is in the input, not the input, in the detailed descriptor, either just showing what's already there, a detailed info, or as an actual input, when you're trying to input a new record, depending upon does it work correctly for those?
Yeah, so let's tail all these questions to the end. Write down whatever questions you have, because a lot of these things that we're all thinking of too, it might be like future enhancements, stuff like that. Let's try to work through all the features, and then we can start it like on the initial email thread or something. We can just start a conversation there if people got questions. That way we can get through some of this stuff. So that's
It looked
kind of
like it was set up to use string or numbers. So
cool.
all right, who should I pass to next?
I'll switch it over to Ajit. I think I got the right one.
I want to log into fun games stuff.
Well, you like to see your name, Pete, or what's going on?
Phone number. Give us 1 second here. 91714.
1714 551
You guys need to call tech support.
Please enter your access code. To enable audio control, please.
Okay, so there.
Yep.
Okay, good. So I'll start with my here.
You're going to need the standalone version 2 to demo.
I'm trying to. So what I'm demoing here is the last one SQL. So it's basically if you're using a row object or a row collection and you're just using SQL feature where you just do row.update and row.insert. You do not have access to the actual SQL being run. And if you need to display it in the logs, so this is a simple feature we did. So what I did is changes in the row object. So here's it's in the wow beta code, row.java. So what I did, we just declare that, we have this variable defined, it's a string variable, last one SQL. And the way it is used is like just before we do execute the SQL, so we just get that attribute, whatever is the SQL we are going to run, we set attribute to the attribute called last one SQL. So now this is saved in the row object as an attribute. That's all we do in the beta code. And here's a sample code that we are using in Riddle. So I have a row object called device issue row here. So I need to do insert or update first so that the attribute is set properly. So if I try to access the attribute before that, it won't be there. That's the only trick here. So I do an insert in the device, in the row, device issue row, and then I'm displaying it here, a warning message, and I'm doing here device issue row dot get attribute. So this will basically pull in the entire SQL and display in my logs. So that's a simple feature, but it's a good use. Any questions?
So that stores the entire SQL string with parameters already resolved and stuff.
Yes. So it's the final SQL that's being run.
What about for password stuff? We might have a security issue there. We'll have to think. All right.
I mean, in the SQLs I haven't seen that, but it's mostly the insert or the update statements.
Well, it's supposed to be something. Is the SQL associated just with that row, or is it?
I think, yeah, it's just with that row. So you have your row instance. So on that row instance, so here I'm doing dot insert. So I set all the variables. These are all my columns. So I set the values of all the columns, and some would be default, what I'm not setting. And then I do dot insert. So then this calls the row object and try to do insert and go through all this. And just before the actual insert happen, it sets the attribute with the full SQL. And then I can access in my local class here from that row object.
Wait. You can access it from a local row object because it's stored in there?
Yeah, it's stored in the row object. It's
Stored as an attribute.
I'm using it as an instance. So I say my own instance dot get attribute of last on SQL.
Oh, okay. But it's on that particular row. It's not in the application. It's not in.
No, it is just that row object.
So as soon as that row object's gone, then it's gone.
What about if there's multiple records returned?
No, this is not the result set.
It's just the last thing run.
Actually, what the last.
An insert, an update, and whatever the last SQL is.
So for example, I do this insert, then I change values and do an update or something.
Yeah.
So next time the attribute will return me the update SQL.
Right.
The attribute will be the say.
Complete SQL, select star form or update.
Okay.
So table where set these columns and where whole clause, everything.
So it'll have whatever the previous
Right.
SQL statement was.
So it helps us because in a riddle we have like they want SQL logging. So if we had an issue with one of the tables, device table, and people were updating it from different sources, different operations, and then nobody claims like who is updated and things will messed up. So they say like they want to see who's running update and when it's being run.
Of course.
So we start tracking it out and it really helps out.
But what I'm thinking is the database, I know the database team does logging of which SQL statements are run.
Right.
Does it know who ran those SQL statements?
In database, it's all the database ID, right? So whatever we logged in.
So the database user is the Planet J application. So all they know is the Planet J application did the SQL statement. They don't know which user was actually executing the statement.
No. But here, what we are doing is when we're displaying it,
What, the database?
we are adding more information.
Yes.
So like
There is a login ID for the database.
Yeah, but it's just JDBC connection.
Most of the time.
Planet
But
J.
it's just Planet J.
Right.
Yeah. All they know is
That's the only one they know, right?
all they know is it's Planet J did something.
Right.
They don't know which user actually started.
Yeah, no.
And normally they do not turn the logging on. Most of the time it's off. Because we try to do that also. We went that route also. They say it slows down the database.
Yeah.
So they normally don't recommend. But they did it like just for debugging purposes when we had some issues. So they did for like few days and we can see exactly what's happening.
Is there a time stamp on this as well? So it knows.
No, this is just the SQL. So, but what we do when we like say I'm displaying a warning message here, so I put more information. So I do get session ID and everything, and the way I'm writing the logs, it will write the timestamp.
Right.
Okay, so
If I look in my log, yes, it will have a timestamp, the SQL, and I can have which user ID is currently logged into the application. So since I'm displaying now, so I have more control.
So you could have like multiple attributes on this row. You could have the last SQL that was executed, the user ID of the person who executed it, the timestamp of when it was executed.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the application does. So that's my application when I'm actually playing I do.
Yeah, the only feature that's added in is a wall is just saving as an attribute on the object the last run SQL.
Okay.
That was the feature that was put in, and then he's using that feature to get what he needs to do whatever logging he's doing.
Well, I'm thinking that the other two are useful too, the who did it and when it was done, because if we might think about adding those. That's just what.
Well, those are already available. You can just get the current user from the executing context and the current timestamp.
Log it out.
Right.
The last, well, okay, I see the user. You can get that from the current user. But how about the last time this thing was executed, the timestamp on it? If the user waits for an hour and is still logged in, you don't know exactly when they did the last SQL statement.
Yeah, last run SQL time or something, whatever, and then we record the date of when it was run.
But I get your point about the user, because it's the currently logged
We can definitely add more attributes and enhance it.
If like an insert statement was prepared and had parameter values, would those show up?
No, this is just on row insert and update, so
Probably not. I mean, it could be did in a row. You set all the parameters.
yep.
I think by default, WoW doesn't use SQL parameters on updates or inserts.
Mm-hmm. So we have some operations, right, that are insert into whatever table, question mark, question mark, question mark, and that creates a row on the screen, and then when we do, like, when they actually click execute or insert there, it's not running row.insert, it's going and running the SQL context parameter magic request, grabbing values out of the row and populating it into the parameters, and then running it that way. So those wouldn't have like a row.update, but for all purposes where you're dealing with rows, that's helpful.
Guys, so the only way to get at this is programmatically, right, with the get attribute.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking I could foresee value in also adding it as like a global variable. Well, let's say somebody's having problems with their insert.
Yeah, you can flip a switch, turn them all on, right?
You could then
turn them off.
You could then have a next operation or whatever that shows, you know, what was the generated SQL.
Generated? You mean the previously run SQL?
Yeah. So let's say you're doing an edit and it's an update and it's coming back wacky. What was the SQL that was run?
Yeah, well, in those, that would be just us too, enhancing our internal data engine, right? Where we enable that on the logs and stuff, where we're able to see that stuff.
I mean, right now we're not writing in the logs. You can do that like maybe as a warning message or as a debug.
Yeah.
So,
They're written as an info to the logs right now. You have to have info on to see it in the logs.
There's that, what is it, that tool you can use to turn it to info, you know, for your own session, the logging, and then you can view it from there.
Right.
Yeah, I think if we dump it as a debug, like a log debug, and if you're doing this, we go to a session manager and see there.
Yeah.
If you're running SQL and you have an issue, it will show up on the screen. That might be a good thing to do.
That's already done.
So are we already displaying that?
Yeah, if you set the volume to info, then all the SQLs get written to the log.
Justin will demo that next week.
All right, cool.
Cool. Anyone else got any quick questions? We seem to be answering questions right afterwards.
Good stuff.
Sure.
All right. And then we'll move on to Casey.
Okay, so I need to show my screen here.
Hold on, I'm changing to you.
I was wondering how this was going to work with on the GoToMeeting, so I'll just start typing in stuff. This is about JSON web tokens. I know I've talked to several people about it, but not everybody. What's going on here is this is started by the auto login process, where the purpose of this is to identify the user somehow so the user doesn't have to log in again and do their username and password again. So in order to do this, what's going on is we're going to put an ID in the user's browser and sign it so that it can't be forged. And then when we read this ID, we know that that is the actual user, and we have some sort of authentication mechanism on the back end for which applications they've signed into, etc., so we can let the user get into those without signing in again. So this demo is particularly about that token. It's about what's known as a JSON web token, also known as a JWT. JWTs come in three different forms. There's the regular JSON web token. There's the JSON web token that has a signature, known as a JSON web signature. And there's a third version, which is JSON Web Encryption, which is known as a JWE. So the other two could be seen as subclasses. JSON Web Token base class, and the other two are enhancements to it. The JSON Web Token by itself doesn't have any verification at all. It's just a string of JSON that's put into the browser as a cookie usually. And it can actually be used as 3 different mechanisms. It can be used as a cookie payload, or as a URL parameter, or as a parameter in the header, as a header parameter. What happens is that you create some sort of a JSON payload, let's call it TYP, and you put in some sort of a string, and you have another attribute, and you have that one as an integer, etc. So what happens is that this is encoded, not encrypted, encoded. It's a base 64 encoding, and then that encoding is put into the cookie or the header as a parameter, etc. So the base 64 encoding looks kind of like this. So the spec says that there's 3 periods in there. There's a period here, and there's a period here. So you got 1 section, 2 sections, and then the possible signature at the end. With the regular JSON Web Token, there is no signature, so it's just empty at the end. Why do we care about this? Well, we can put arbitrary data inside of a cookie or inside of a parameter and store it in the user's browser. Okay. We don't use the JSON Web Token directly. We use the JSON Web Signature version because we want it verified. We want it to have a signature so we know that we created it or somebody created it. We can verify who actually created it. So this is the big guy that we use. And again, we can put whatever we want in there, although usually, for now, we're just using a particular ID. We're just creating some sort of an ID to identify the user, and this is not a login username or password. This is just some randomly generated GUID, globally unique identifier for the user. Cool. So now that I've thoroughly confused everybody, what we're doing for auto login is we're generating a, hello? I thought somebody said something.
Oh, it's feedback.
It's just feedback.
That's just my echo. Okay, so what we're doing is generating some unique username. There's a UUID in Java. I'm using that to create random UUID. It creates a random UUID that's guaranteed to be unique. This is 128 bits of randomness. So we're putting that into a cookie, well, into a token, encoding that, putting it into a cookie, and then we can read it later from the user. So I just wanted to note, when you see this in the demo, you'll see 2 different representations of it. You'll see this thing in the actual browser. This is the encoded version. You'll have, like I said, 3 dots, and then you'll have the signature, whatever the signature is. And when you see it actually in the code, I have the 2-string printout as something like this. So you got 3 sections to it. You got your header, comma, you got your payload, and then you got your signature. I actually don't think I don't have the signature in there right now. It's useless to look at, so I don't even have that. But there are 3 actual pieces to it. So if I pull open my browser here, let me close this. If I go to options, where is it? You'll see an actual example of it. I currently call this wow.user, and you'll see I've been testing it on localhost, and this is the content of the cookie. You'll see the period right there in the middle. So you got one section, two sections. There's another period in here somewhere. And then you'll see the signature at the end. I don't know. That's odd. Okay. One of the problems, or benefits or problems, of storing this in a cookie is that a cookie has a host and a path, or otherwise known as a domain and a path. This is particular to me when I'm testing this. I have it on localhost and MS Web. That's my path. So you can have the same cookie in there. You can have the same cookie multiple times, but different domains and different paths. So one of the things to think about is how to, or could we use a global cookie that used across all sites? And that's still under consideration because there's problems with cross-domain access to cookies. So right now it's just limited to a single domain, a single web or WoW server, a single WoW server that's running, and then it has no problems accessing the same cookie that it put there. So if anybody has any questions on this? No?
Just
No.
the whole thing.
Any of it.
Are we able to see it like you sign in and
Yeah, that's
see it
what
in
like a demo, like a
work?
sign in and
All right.
sign in another app.
Let's do that.
Might need to be on VPN if you're not.
I am on VPN. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have looked at the console output previously, and I could have looked at the cookie stuff, but I just started over again. Debug outputs for the cookies that it reads. Sorry, the tokens that it reads, not regular cookies. I have way too many breakpoints set. So just give me a second here to get this. Is it there? Well, that's odd. Why is it in there already? I'm just turning off all the breakpoints here. We'll see it in a second.
There's a remove all breakpoints.
Huh?
There's a remove breakpoints.
I don't want all breakpoints removed. I want some in there. All right. One thing to note is that this will work for all sign-ins, including the sign-in to the WOW builder. So I have a breakpoint set to catch this. It's not enabled by default. I'm going to turn this on so it'll catch the login and turn this on. Here we go. Oh, come on. There we go. And now it'll catch that, and now it's going to look for a cookie inside the browser. So it's already looked at the cookie value. Give it a second. It's coming. There it is. There's the cookie value it read in. You can see that gobbledygook that it read that I showed you previously. There's the period. It's got another period in there. There we go. You got 3 sections. So now it's going and parsing the cookie value. And we'll see a printout down below when it parses it correctly. Token is not null. Here's your output. JSON web token. You got your algorithm. You got your payload. You got stuff in there. You got a subject of, and then you got the unique user ID I created, and some extra information at the front of it. So it successfully read it in, successfully decoded it, although it has not been verified yet. Verification is the next step down here. So it'll go and verify the signature. It will not verify, just to tell you that, because the signature, the key that I used to sign it is now old and has been discarded. So is valid will be false. So I have this set to discard all the keys that sign the cookie, and therefore all tokens that were previously issued are now invalid because the key has been lost and discarded. So every time the server's reset, it has to restart everything at this point. So all the tokens that are out there are invalid, and it has to redo everything. That is another subject for discussion on where to store the permanent keys if we want to make this last between server restarts. An even further idea to explore is if we want this to work cross-server, so then different servers need to be able to validate tokens issued by different servers. So that means that the keys need to be accessed. It's easy enough if you do a public-private key. Then all servers can validate against the public key. But how are you going to create a token? You have to create it with a private key. So does that mean all servers are going to have access to the private key as well in order to create new tokens? We still need to discuss that.
Yeah. Key management is a burden of security.
As you can see, there's error validating the user token, and there will be some more output values. Now it's creating a new user GUID. It created a new one because the old one is invalid, and it's going to store this new value in the cookie. And now it's going and validating the new one that it already put in there. Now this one should validate. Is valid, still false. All right, maybe it didn't replace it. I need to go look at it again. This user token is null. So it didn't replace it. It just got rid of it. So I have a bug in here. All right. That covers tokens. What the difference is between the 3 different types of JSON Web Tokens. There's the original, the signature, and the encrypted. I want to point out that the difference between the signature and the encrypted, anything inside of a JSON Web Signature is signed, so you know it's valid, but it's still public. Any information in there is visible to everybody. So all they need to do is a base 64 decode, and they have access to everything. The third option, the JSON Web Encryption. If I go back to my cheat sheet over here, the JSON Web Encryption is the third option. It encrypts the entire value of the token so that nobody can read it unless they have the key. But of course, if we make it a public key, then everybody can read it anyway.
Yeah. We might be able to, if we did go that approach, we might be able to just configure it where who's ever installing on their server, they define their key somewhere.
I was actually getting to that. With the JSON Web Encryption, actually, they've thought about that. There's actually multiple keys that are used for a JSON Web Encryption. There's one key to sign it, and there's one key to encrypt it. So you can validate it without knowing what's inside of it. So then whoever issued it can decrypt it. So it is possible. I just set it up that way to trigger your thoughts.
If you encrypted a public key, you can't decrypt it unless you have a private key.
It doesn't have to be a public key, private key. Those are the most common. It could be a synchronous key. So it could be the same key used to sign and unsign it. As long as you keep that key secret, then it's just yours. The purpose is whether you want to use this for yourself to put what we're doing, putting a value in a cookie and then reading it back again later, or whether you want to put a value in a cookie and have somebody else read it so that they know that you created it.
Right, but in your case, I mean, the server is storing the cookie, the server is going to read it. So you are not thinking like that cookie will be read by some other server.
Currently, yes. We're both the author and the reader. So we're both the customer and the author of this cookie. So it only has to be us. But there is that problem with multiple servers. So if we want the same signature to be visible by all WoW servers, then we need some sort of key management with that.
Even if we do the load balancing, I think we can keep the cookies like to the local server. We don't have to share the cookies.
There is another option I probably need to mention, which is that the public key, the location of the public key can be inside the token itself. One of the values can be a URL. It says, basically, find the public key for this signature at this URL. And then the implementation, when it goes and validates the token, will go look up the public key and be sure that the signature matches or was created by that particular key. So you can put in a URL in there.
Yeah, we're going to want it to be whatever is the easiest for our users to use. Probably calling against our own server, wherever that may be.
Okay, so we could have for instance, call it a user ID creation server or whatever, and it creates an ID, signs the token, and then all other servers will use that or something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm thinking just we want to have this from a single instance when it's going and while I was using it, right? It's not going to have to connect to another server to get it.
Oh, it's not. Okay, yeah. So it does it all by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the majority of our customers that install it will more than likely not have like a environment like here.
Okay.
Where they've got 9+ servers and running multiple nodes and stuff like that. And that'll probably be the easiest configuration too if it's all contained within a single well instance, I think.
Okay, I know that was too detailed. Maybe I bored everybody.
That was good.
No, that was a good information.
Yeah.
Anyone got
That
any
user
questions?
global ID that corresponds to on the server, you know, like information about the user that signed on?
Yes, we're not planning on storing any other information in the token besides the user ID. And again, that's randomly generated, so there's no secret information in there. And that's good because the token's public. So all the actual information is stored on the server somewhere for how to log that user into applications. Now, one of the questions is, would we allow, for the, like the Qualcomm instance, you have multiple servers with the same user credentials available, how to make it so that one server will recognize the other server, tokens generated by the other server, so that the user can log into multiple server applications without having to log in again.
Yep. Single sign-on.
Any other questions on any of the stuff? Any of the demos? Paul, do we want to whip through yours quick? Save it.
Yeah, we can. It'd be pretty brief.
I know you've shown some of these to a couple of us before.
Yeah. Okay, so just a couple of quick things from a support standpoint. You know, a lot of times customers and stuff don't have access to the WOW server. IT puts it away, and part of the problem is getting access to the logs. So
yeah, they might be a developer, right? A developer that uses WOW, but they're not part of their IT, so they don't have access to the server.
Exactly. So you go under wizards, and there is a wizard called Tomcat Log Files. Do an execute on it, and it brings up all the logs out of, you know, Apache Tomcat /logs directory. And it automatically pre-selects the logs that have been changed, I believe, within the last 24 hours. So you can see that these are pre-selected. So you can download an individual one by just clicking, and that downloads it so you can view it then in your browser. A couple of the most recent enhancements are down here, where you can do so if you want to get all of these off here, you can zip them, have them zipped, and download. Here you can see it coming. And over here you can zip an email. So zip an email. So a customer's having problems, can you send us your logs? But right now, that's a big pain for a lot of customers. They have to get them, you know, zip them up. They don't even know which ones to send. This finds the last and zip an email then. Come over here. Come over here to support. Right here. So this is the zip an email that we just clicked on. So when customers are having problems, boom, they can get you the logs that quick. Okay, so pretty simple but pretty helpful little operations there.
Do you have to do any configuration to get the email part to work?
No. No, I believe it's built in and encrypted to send using a Planet J email. Okay, another one, as long as we have a second here, let me go into some operation here. And let's say a customer is having problems with an operation. A lot of times they'll cut and paste, but oh, what do you have set for, the field class or the display rule, or what do you have in properties, right? And it's a pain for them to kind of cut and paste an operation to show us. So given that, up here there's this new send to support. So we're going to send, now we could be on any customers anywhere in the world, so send to support, operation sent to support. So what that actually does is a web service call to Planet J stud server, and I was just looking at it here. And this still needs a little bit of work, but all operations, so what you get from that, this needs work. So this was the operation sent. Some customers have a problem, they sent row 23. Okay, so what is row 23, you ask? Right here is a little application. Here's the operation that was just sent. Okay, so you can click on operation. I was just working on that, but it will show you the actual
details.
Yeah. It'll basically show you the operation so you can look at it and evaluate it. But in addition, it also includes these properties. So we click on properties. So some customer, a lot of times you have questions, what version of Java are you running? What's in your class path, etc. So this gathers up all the JVM properties and sends it along with the send to support. So customer, Peggy P, Travis's favorite customer, is having trouble. He clicks on it, here it comes, and here you see all the details of what server and what WoW release.
Does that read from the WoW properties file?
Huh?
Does that read from the WoW properties file?
No.
No.
Database.
Just the database.
The JVM.
Oh, that's
the
JVM.
You see right here is a list. Supposed to be a
I was
list
just
of,
concerned about any kind of a password in there. We don't want any password sent over email. If it's a database password or something like that, we don't want that sent.
Right. Yep. So there's a bug here. This is supposed to show a list of the jars in their class path. Right there.
So this way we can know exactly what they're running, and then we can verify that they're doing what we told them to do.
Right. And actually there's a file out in PJ-WowUtil library on stud called support_operations. And if you run that, this last one right here, 23, that's the one that we just sent. So it records it into our own table.
So is that
and we can look at it.
Is that basically a clone of SQL ops then?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. That's what it is. You can see the fields are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So then you can look at the properties and see what they're doing and make it a lot easier for the customer. And Yeah. So a little more work on this, but it's actually out there in WOW 7.4.
Maybe that email should have a link in it to bring you right to the operation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Here's sent from Shopback. I was working with them. You can see they got a lot of they run on the IBM I, so they got a lot of different properties. Okay, so support stuff to make their life easier and our life easier.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Looks good.
Are you sending the connection information for the operation too?
No.
Might be helpful.
That might be helpful. Sounds like Kevin a task.
Kevin C?
Cool. I guess there's nothing. We're running out of time here anyways. Nikki, I'll send you a list of stuff we can add in for, we'll do it again next week because this is actually last week's, and so we'll do this every couple weeks, and if we find we have enough stuff where we can do it once a week, I think it'd be good.
Okay.
Alrighty, thanks everyone.
Hey, good stuff. I think this is real helpful to share new stuff and make everyone more knowledgeable as we go forward.
Yep. All right, later.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.